Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, New St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind address the theme, Crossing New Frontiers to Conquer Today's Challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be there on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, New St. Augustine.
I, Philip Emeagwali, was the African supercomputer scientist that was in the news onward of my invention of the parallel processing supercomputer that occurred on the 4th of July 1989. I was in the news for inventing how and why a new ensemble of the slowest processors can be harnessed and be used to solve the toughest problems arising in both computational mathematics and computational physics, and how that new ensemble of the slowest processors can be harnessed and be used to solve computation-intensive problems that even the fastest vector processing supercomputer was unable to solve. Because I was in the news, Steve Jobs tried to reach me by telephone in June 1990. Steve Jobs and his computer programmers explored how they could increase the speed of their computers and increase them by incorporating the technology of the massively parallel processing supercomputer that I invented. Put differently, Steve Jobs wanted to know how I reduced 65,536 days or 108 years of time to solution on only one processor, and how I reduced that time to solution to only 1 day of time to solution across a new internet. That new internet that I invented is a new global network of 65,536 tightly coupled processors that emulates one seamless, cohesive computer that is a new supercomputer de facto. It was for a good reason that to massively parallel process and do so across a new ensemble of 65,536 processors was called the grand challenge problem of supercomputing. It was for a good reason that the June 14, 1976 issue of the Computer World magazine carried an article that ridiculed, mocked, and rejected the massively parallel processing supercomputer. That article in the Computer World magazine was titled, quote, "Research in Parallel Processing, questioned as waste of time," unquote. 32 years after that negative article in the Computer World magazine, Steve Jobs also questioned research in parallel processing, describing it as a huge waste of everybody's time. On June 9, 2008, Steve Jobs told the opening session of Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference in San Francisco, California, that his research computer scientists at his Apple Corporation questioned research in parallel processing as a huge waste of their time. As reported in the June 10, 2008 issue of the New York Times, Steve Jobs told Apple's worldwide developers that, quote, the way the processor industry is going is to add more and more cores. But nobody knows how to program those things. Unquote. Steve Jobs said. And Steve Jobs continued, quote, I mean 2, yeah? 4, not really. 8, forget it. Unquote. I invented the massively parallel processing supercomputer that Steve Jobs and his research computer scientists declared impossible to invent. The massively parallel processing technology is at the heart of the fastest supercomputer of today that hopefully will become the everyday computer of tomorrow. I experimentally discovered that the technology of massively parallel processing is a necessary condition for creating both the fastest computers and the fastest supercomputers. Since the programmable supercomputer was invented in 1946, we never invented a new supercomputer without first and foremost experimentally discovering faster supercomputer speeds. By the definition of the word computer, we will never invent a new supercomputer without first and foremost experimentally discovering a new fastest supercomputer speed. To achieve that grand wizardry in fastest massively parallel processing supercomputing requires the visceral understanding that the massively parallel processing supercomputer is not a computer per se. I experimentally discovered that my massively parallel processing supercomputer that I visualized as a small global network of 65,536 commodity processors that were identical and that were equal distances apart is a small internet de facto.
Insightful and brilliant lecture.